In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Christ is among us. Beloved children, in today's Gospel, we see two men, two workers, two slaves asking for forgiveness. One asked for forgiveness from his master, the other one asked for forgiveness from his fellow worker. Both of them had the same problem. Both of them had the same reason for asking for forgiveness. What was the reason? Both of them were owning a debt. One of them a huge debt that he could not pay in a lifetime. This was the reality. 10,000 talents was a huge amount. The other one was owing to his fellow worker 100 denarii. That was also a big amount, but not an amount that could not be paid. 100 denarii, we know that in those days, a worker would be paid a denarii a day. So that was the wage for a worker for 100 days. Not something that could not be paid off. However, this servant who lent 100 denarii to his fellow worker refused to forgive his fellow worker. Now, this is a parable, so it is a made-up story. What kind of debt do you think that the Lord is talking about? Is it about money? Do you think it's about money? But what kind of debt do you think that the Lord is talking about? A sin? Yes, that is very true. A sin. They missed the mark. Okay? That's what amarthia means, in the original Greek New Testament, sin is amarthia, to miss the mark. The first servant missed the mark. He did something wrong against the master. Okay? The master, of course, stands for God, to whom we owe a lot. The other servant missed the mark. He did something wrong against his fellow worker, and he refused to forgive him. However, what I want to talk to you about is not forgiveness. We're going to talk about that in the sermon for adults, but I want to talk to you about asking for forgiveness. We can see both of them in a very humble way, kneeling down and asking for forgiveness. At least they knew to do that. They knew that they sinned. They did something wrong. They missed the mark. They were not as loving as they were called to be. The first one towards his master, the second one towards his fellow worker, and they knew to ask for forgiveness. Why do we find it hard so many times to ask for forgiveness? What do you think? Why do we find it so hard sometimes, to ask for forgiveness? I can speak from my own experience. I remember being a child and finding very hard sometimes, to ask for forgiveness. Most of the times because I thought that I was not wrong. Maybe a few times, I was not wrong. Does it really matter? Does it really matter if we are right or wrong and to ask for forgiveness? What is more important? Let me ask you something else. Because we are so focused on being right. But is God right? No, He's not. I'm sorry to tell you, but God is not right. Today's parable reveals again to us that God is not right. He is loving, which is a lot more than being right. Was it right for the master who stands for God? Was it right for the master to forgive that huge debt of that slave? No, it was not right. The right thing would have been for that slave to pay his debt. Correct? That's the right thing to do. No, this is correct, this is right, you have to pay your debt. But the master was not right. He was loving. There is another parable in the Gospels about God, about a man who stands again for God the Father, who is hiring servants. One servant at the first hour, another servant at the third hour. So from 6 a.m. to 9, the second one at 9 a.m., the third one at noon, the fourth one in the afternoon, and the fifth one in the evening. Who worked, the one who was hired at the 11th hour was at the end of the day, and he worked for only 1 hour. Guess what? At the end of the day, he decides to pay all of them the same. And the other servants say, this was not right. And the man who stands for God said, it is my money. I do what I want to do. I want to give to everyone. God is not right. He is loving. We are so concerned about being right. That's why that fellow servant find it hard to forgive the other servant. Because he thought, this is right and you have to do what is right. In life, please remember that if you want to be like God, we are called to be loving, not right. Why did Hitler start the war? The Second World War, the most devastating war humanity has ever experienced. More than 20 million people died in that war, and that's, according to statistics, but we don't have, accurate statistics. Why did he start the war? Because he believed that something was not right, and he wanted to make it right. Why do people start fights so many times? Why do children start fights? Because as children, as grown-up children, we think that this is not right. And then we start to fight. It is the same, with asking for forgiveness. Yes, sometimes we have to ask for forgiveness, even if we think that, maybe, or we cannot see the mistake, but we see that the other person is hurt. What is more important? To be right or to stay in a loving relationship with a person who, for good reason or no good reason, was hurt by us? What is more important, to be right or to stay in a loving relationship with that person? Is it not more important to keep the loving relationship? So please keep in mind that not everything is right, not everything is fair, but if we want to be like God, if we want to stay in loving relationships with everyone, ask for forgiveness, and especially when we realize that we did something wrong, go and ask for forgiveness in the first second that you realize that you did something wrong, so that we could reestablish the loving relationship with whomever we hurt. Our friend, our parents, our grandparents, God, whomever person we hurt, ask for forgiveness so that we can keep the loving relationship. Amen. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Amen.